Hello, I'm Cheryl McCarthy. Welcome to One to One. John Mogalescu was an indifferent college student who planned to become a social worker and wound up becoming a teacher only to avoid the draft. But once fate brought him to the City University of New York, he set out on a path that would keep him at the university for almost 50 years and lead him to create some of the most innovative and successful programs in the university's history. In his new book, The Dean of New Things, Bringing Change to CUNY and New York, he describes the challenges of bringing change to a large, tradition-bound university and the kind of vision that made it possible. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Cheryl.
So, John, why did you write this book?
Oh, for any number of reasons. I mean, one, I was encouraged by others to do it. But two, I felt that the story, that 49-year story, is a unique one and very unusual within the framework of higher education. A group of very non-traditional, in some ways non-credentialed folks who had an amazing ability to create new programs and to change the university. And I thought it was a story that should be told. And I was not a writer. I'm not someone who has written books before. But we did a lot of things that both changed CUNY and influenced policy in New York City. And I thought it was important to tell that story.
Now, one of the first people, I guess the first person that you worked for when you came to CUNY was Fanny Eisenstein. And you say that you write that meeting her changed your life.
Right. It did. I was a second-year graduate student in social work, as you said in your introduction. But I was placed at then New York City Community College, a branch of CUNY. I didn't know why a social work community organizer would be placed at a community college, and I knew very little about community colleges. I walked in to meet my new supervisor, this woman, Fanny Eisenstein. She came out to greet me. I hate to say this. She seemed old to me and full of gray hair, and I was in my mid-20s or so. And then she opened her mouth, and an hour later, I realized my life had changed. She had this vision of what could be done on the non-credit side of the house, called adult and continuing education, about how you should serve the community, about how you should run programs. I spent 13 years working with her, and she was a hero to me and to almost everybody who had the opportunity to work for her. She assigned me as my first project as a graduate student to organize a prison education program in downtown Brooklyn at the jail down there, the Brooklyn House of Detention. They had 2,000 men awaiting trial. I organized a kind of a literacy high school equivalency program, wrote a grant, got funded, and that began my CUNY career. And those 13 years framed a lot of my thinking about what I needed to do as I went on with my career.
So it seems like her process was finding out what people in the community needed and then seeing if there was some way that CUNY could address it.
That's a keen observation, Cheryl. It's true. And in fact, she had her pulse on the needs of the community. Now, you have to understand that this was the non-credit side of the house. It was not the degree side.
Right.
So it was a side that had outreach to community. And so, for example, there was a need who, for whatever the reason, had not learned to read or had literacy issues. She had an interest in getting people who had dropped out of the public school system their high school equivalency diplomas. For women, non-traditional employment, and we had a program related to that. We had a program related to people who were living in nursing homes and providing opportunities. And so she went where there were community needs. And again, that truly affected my thinking as I went on with my career.
I know that your work resulted in a very huge university-wide program for people who want to get their high school equivalency.
Mm-hmm. New York City Community College, which became New York City College of Technology. We were able to get some outside money and ultimately some money from the city. When I left that college to go to the system office of the university, that was the Office of Adult and Continuing Education. And the cornerstone of what we did was literacy and high school equivalency and second language acquisition for basically immigrants. And that began this program expansion. And again, in New York City, there was just an unimaginable number of adults who didn't read as well as they needed to. And so we found a niche, and we were not alone. We expanded, once I got to Central, with many of the CUNY campuses. You don't typically think of a university doing things like adult literacy and high school equivalency and ESL, second language instruction, and some basic training. But there was a need, and it was our view that the mission of a great public university can't be just about degree students, but has to be about helping the city solve its urban problems.
Yeah. And I have to say that years ago, there was a university-wide graduation ceremony for people who had obtained their high school equivalency, and I think some other certificates. And I was the commencement speaker for the occasion.
My guess is I was at that ceremony, and I'm trying to remember that I'm sure you were, you know. And what we had done is, because those folks had never had the opportunity to be at a graduation ceremony, to get their regular high school diploma. I don't know if this was one, we did one in the rotunda of what was the former graduate school, and I don't know if that was the one.
No, this one was at John Jay.
And it was at John Jay, where we did that too, and deservedly so, and I'm sure you gave a splendid speech.
It was a very joyous event for the people.
It was indeed.
I want to talk about some of the programs that you helped to develop after going to work for the Central Board. And one was the ASAP.
Yep.
And what does that stand for?
We call it ASAP, which is as soon as possible. And it had to do with getting students to the finish line and
To finish the community colleges.
to get a degree.
Right.
And in, 2004 or so, 2005, the Chancellor, Matthew Goldstein, went to see Mayor Bloomberg and said, our graduation rates for community colleges are abysmally low. And they were 3-year graduation rates for a 2-year degree were somewhere in the teens, 13, 14%. And he said, we will do better if you can give me some seed money to develop a program. And Bloomberg said, what will you get me? And the chancellor said, I'll get you a 50% 3-year graduation rate, which was unheard of. Came back and asked me and a few other people, told us about it, and then said to put a team together and create a program that will get us close to 50% graduation. And we put a team together, a lot of the folks who we had worked with, some faculty members, and came up with some common sense kinds of items. We didn't touch instruction. We looked at that you needed to come full time. We looked to enhance advisement and even make it more intrusive. We, if someone doesn't come to class, to be on the phone and say, what's going on? Can we be of help? We kind of block program the first year so that people didn't get lost in the selection of courses and majors. We filled financial gaps. We gave people Metro cards. And we made them feel special.
And you also made it possible if they could take, for scheduling, they could take their classes either in the morning or in the
Tried to, because a lot of the
afternoon.
CUNY students needed to work, and we were told, well, you don't understand CUNY students. How can they go full time? But in fact, we realized that by looking at the data that 88% of the students did go full time. Fast forward 3 years, we had a 53% graduation with 53% of this initial pilot of 1,100 students. We expanded to 4,000 over the next few years with some money from outside folks, the Robin Hood Foundation and some other support. And when Mayor de Blasio came in, and typically a new mayor comes in, you have a opportunity to provide kind of a listing of things that CUNY would like. Almost none of them are funded, but you go through an exercise. And a couple of weeks after we submitted that list, and ASAP was one of those programs we requested money for. The new chancellor, Matthew Goldstein, had left. Bill Kelly was the new interim chancellor. He called me and a couple of other people, Jay Hershenson and others in, and he said, well, you won't believe this. We just got $77 million to expand ASAP from its 4,000 to 25,000 over the next 9 years. And so we began that process. 8 years later, this was well, de Blasio was 2013 or so. We were at 25,000, and the graduation rates were now close to 50%. And a third of all the student. I was at LaGuardia Community College for a meeting earlier today. A third of all their students, community college, are ASAP students, and a half of all their first-time freshmen now are ASAP students. And it's actually improved the overall graduation rates because of the influence of that one program.
Have you ever gotten a chance to talk to any of the students who went through that program?
From time to time.
Yeah.
And they're grateful, and all of a sudden you'll bump into somebody and they said, I was in ASAP. The program's also been expanded to 10 states, and it's been replicated there. It's gotten huge recognition, and the person who ran it for CUNY and ran the expansion is now at the State University of New York, SUNY, and is introducing that program to over 20 of its community colleges at SUNY as well.
While we're on the subject of community colleges, you helped create a new community college at CUNY. First of all, how many community colleges are there altogether?
7.
There's 7, including the new one.
Yes.
Why did CUNY need a new community college?
I didn't think that necessarily whether we did or we didn't, but again, the chancellor, this was a year after ASAP, I came to him with a proposal to rethink the first year of community college education. I had gotten a commitment from the Robin Hood Foundation to support that. And the chancellor looked at me, he said, I'm really not that interested in that. I'd like to build a new community college that's different. And so again, we went back to putting a team together. We built something that's called Gutman Community College. It wasn't called Gutman, it was called the New Community College.
Right, for a while, right.
And then the Gutman Foundation gave us a good amount of money.
Where is it located?
It's on 40th Street between 5th and 6th Avenue. It's in lease space. And
near Bryant Park,
right across the street from Bryant Park. It's a wonderful location. It's small, it's about 1,000 students, and it's been successful. It opened at 2012 or so. It had a different approach to the first year, similar to ASAP. It also wanted you to go full time. It also wanted you to think about the world of work in the first year, and also so many of our students got stymied by remediation. They were stuck in remedial courses, and the way the concept for Gutman was that you would integrate that into your regular coursework, and you would have a bridge before you start college and the summer before, and it was small, with a small number of majors, because we didn't want to start with giving people this huge choice, and there were other opportunities at CUNY. And again, it's been successful, although it has not expanded the way we had hoped. We had hoped that it would go to 5,000 students. The university had ideas about a building and how to do that, and it just, at the moment, has not yet materialized, and so it still is a small college of about 1,000 students. Mm-hmm.
And then there was your real baby, the School of Professional Studies.
Yes. Again, little story behind it. The executive vice chancellor of academic affairs and I went to Louise Mira. She's now actually been the long-term president of the New York Historical Society. Went to a conference at Johns Hopkins on adult learners. On the train back, she said, we need to, do more for adult students and create a school that would be directly for adult learners. And could you build it? Could you help build it? And we put a small team together. I stayed in the system office, and we built this school that started with certificate programs for teachers who were learning a new reading curriculum, certificate programs with organizations like the Museum of Natural History and Lincoln Center to do some training. But ultimately in 2006, 3 years after it opened, the university was looking to start its first online programs. And we were asked by the then Vice Chancellor Selma Botman to build those first programs. There was not that interest in the rest of the university.
Our original degree was designed and built for degree completers at CUNY because I think John knew that there were an incredible amount of stop-outs who just could not get to that finish line.
People were very skeptical. How legitimate is this? How's my degree gonna read?
Why offer online instruction within a university that has all the students it can possibly handle? And the answer is flexibility. Flexibility, first and foremost, for working adults who don't have the time to spend on campus.
I had to work mornings, afternoon, and evening shifts, so I applied. I got it accepted as the best thing in my life that ever happened.
Summa cum laude.
And over the 12 years or so, we built 25, 26 degree programs at master's level and baccalaureate level, mostly online, almost all online, and we're quite good at it. We also serve the city with a non-credit unit called PUEL, Professional Education and Workforce Development, and that served another 30,000 New Yorkers who were already incumbent workers but needed training in a variety of areas. We worked with Administration for Children's Services, we worked with HRA, and the program now has about, I believe for this spring, about 4,300 degree students. And again, this 30,000 or so, we brought in a lot of grant money. And
so this is basically for people who, when they're adults, they're already working in most cases.
That is correct. And at the undergraduate level, you had to have some college but no degree. You had to have a minimum of, it wasn't for first-time freshmen.
Okay.
And in New York City, there are 800,000 or so adults who have some college and no degree. And so it was geared to that. And then to helping the city solve problems and deal with issues. And we had programs with corrections, with homeless services, and so forth.
There are major obstacles to change in a university.
There are.
Talk about that.
Well, almost everything that we were initially asked to do and tried to do were opposed by certain folks. Often it was the faculty governance folks, the faculty senate who...
In fact, the faculty was often opposed to a lot of the things
they were.
that you were trying to do.
They were, and yet we enlisted the faculty who were willing and who wanted to try new things. So for example, the online program was built by faculty from all over the university who had been stymied running online courses at their own colleges. So things were opposed, and whether it be ASAP or Gutman, or programs like CUNY START or any number of others. And fortunately, we ducked under that criticism. We moved on. We had the support of our chancellor and our board chair, who was Benno Schmidt at the time. And we didn't let the criticism get in our way. Interesting sidebar note. The union has a newspaper called The Clarion that comes out, I don't know, every other month or so. And this, I get it at home. And it had an article on ASAP, which the headline was, "You can't cut ASAP, basically. It's too valuable a program." Of course, when it started, 15 years ago, they felt, why are we doing this? So, but that's the nature of big organizations, resistance to change. And, I always believe if you don't innovate, you just stay stagnant. And also, it was my view that it made your job more fun. If you are doing things that are new and different and are measured for success, and everything that we did was measured. We had a very large research unit. It makes your job just far more enjoyable.
Are there major lessons that you learned from your work that you would pass on to another administrator?
Yeah, surround yourself with good, smart people as a first.
One of his greatest attributes has been his ability to hire and retain amazing staff.
I was lucky enough to hire really smart, talented people. 2, say yes to opportunity. I mean, don't immediately say there's too much on my plate, I can't do it.
The work came to John and he never said no. We always figured out how to do it, even if it was something that stretched in directions that we hadn't thought about initially.
I felt that even if we did not know that much about a particular area, if city government or state government asked us to do something, we're in New York City and state and they're going to give us money, we'll hire experts who can do that. And we did that over and over again.
Some of the categories that at times
have not been sexy for the university, have not been in the radar screen, and John has always kept them front and center.
I would think that when you were asked by the chancellor to move the community college graduation rate from what was 11%,
Well, it was a little bit higher, but yes,
to 50%.
yes.
Some people would say, well, I don't think that's possible.
Well, I was one of those. You know, we had no idea whether we could do it, but we had talented people and a lot of energy and passion, and the students deserved it. And particularly students who, you know, we were accused in some ways of not understanding who CUNY students are. They're poor, they're on public assistance, they're single parents, they have families, and they're low income. And I was like, all true, you know, but so what? What about our responsibility? And it's okay to fail. Let's try and do something than think the status quo.
There's a lot of talk these days about humanities education, courses in philosophy and English literature and languages are going the way of the horse and buggy because everybody wants to study technical subjects. And what are your feelings about that?
So there's a dilemma here because business and technology are areas that students do want to enroll in. On the other hand, my view is that the humanities remain incredibly important and that you can be an English major or a history major and still have a good career somewhere, particularly if you do well in college. And the other thing I would argue, the people who say college is not necessary, all of the data that I know indicates that if you get a BA, whether it's in the humanities or technology or business, and particularly in healthcare, you become a nurse, it's a ticket to the middle class. And so the people who are the biggest proponents of maybe colleges, and there are alternatives. I don't doubt that there are certificate programs and shorter ways, apprenticeships and other things. But at the end of the day, a degree matters. And many of the critics who feel the way that you expressed, Cheryl, when you ask about their own children, they want them at the most elite colleges. And you know, and I'm not saying that there's not room for alternatives. There are. And in continuing ed, we were, you know, filled with some of those shorter term programs that did lead to employment. But the idea that a degree doesn't matter, I just argue against.
What accomplishments are you most proud of?
You know, thousands of students were served by our programs, tens of thousands, you know, and people got degrees either who wouldn't have gotten degrees or who would have gotten them 5 years later. And so that's right at the top of the list. And then that we brought programs to scale. That's unusual. Often you get seed money to start something small. But, you know, so ASAP is now a permanent fixture in CUNY. SPS is a permanent part, one of the 25 colleges. Gutman is one of 7 community colleges. So to bring things to scale as opposed to, you know, do little small things. And then lastly, we influenced the importance of the mission of CUNY. It's my sense that CUNY can't just be about degree programs. It has to be about helping the city and state solve urban problems. And I am proud that we did that, and we didn't have time to go into many areas, whether early childhood, or public assistance, or PD, police department. And we had programs in all of these areas and tried to help the city solve problems. So I could probably go on about that, but those are the top of my list.
So you spent almost 50 years. How many years was it exactly?
49.
It was 49 years at CUNY, helping to create a number of very successful programs, and you've written your book. What's next for you?
I don't know. I have 5 grandchildren who are all local and nearby, and two different families. I'm doing some consulting. I'm not going to write another book. I would be hard-pressed to say I would. I hope to have some influence about, you know, public policy. related to higher education, related to city government and state government, related to how leadership works and how nonprofits intersect with things like higher ed. I didn't talk about, and I should have, the large number of programs we had with K-12. I mean, and I should have done that because we built 20 early college high schools. We had a dual enrollment program. I'm very proud of that as well. College Now, that expanded to have over 20,000 students taking college credit classes while in high school. And we worked with the Department of Ed to try and figure out solutions to problems and transition from high school to college, as opposed to blaming the Department of Ed always for giving us students who were not prepared.
Right.
And sometimes that was the case, but then what's our responsibility? So I'm proud of a whole lot, and that I kind of brought together a group of folks who now are in leadership positions all over the place. And coming out of our area, our unit was incredibly successful. It was the innovative arm of the university. And as people moved on, they got positions of leadership all over the country.
Well, thank you for your work.
Thank you.
And thank you for being here today. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Again, I'd like to thank Founding Dean of the CUNY School of Professional Studies, John Mogilescu, for joining me today. His book, The Dean of New Things, is available online. To learn about our upcoming shows, you can follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter, at 1-to-1 CUNY TV. For the City University of New York and 1-to-1, I'm Cheryl McCarthy.